Have you ever considered adopting a fox, but you're not sure where to start? Let's go ahead and talk about that a little bit today. So first and foremost, the very first thing you need to do if you're considering adopting a fox is you need to ensure that where you live, it is actually legal. As of last I checked, there is about 14 states in the United States that do allow you to have pet foxes, but they have varying laws that go alongside it. Most states require you to get a license from your wildlife department. There are a couple of states that do not require a license, but they do still require you to get the fox from a licensed breeder or rescue. And even in those states where foxes are legal, you do also have to verify that the county and town or city that you live in also is legal. Cities and counties can further regulate on top of the state law. So let's say, for example, the state of Oklahoma, it is legal to have a fox, but specific counties or towns can outlaw foxes completely or require some additional licensing or permissions from the city or county themselves to make it completely legal. You may have to get direct permission from the town or county. Once you verify that it is legal to have a fox in your state, city, and county, the next thing you need to do is begin thinking about vet care. Not all vets can see and treat foxes, and even if they are licensed to do so, not all of them are willing to. Foxes are considered a rabies vector species, and although that does not affect the care of domestic captive bred foxes at all, some veterinarians will not see them due to this fact. They do have to have 2 additional years of schooling to be able to see exotic animals, and pet foxes fall into that category. So once you verify that you do have a vet that is willing to see and treat a fox, then you can begin thinking about your enclosure. This enclosure that we're in right now is actually a pretty good example of how an enclosure can be built rather cheaply and efficiently. So this enclosure is built out of 2 Producer's Pride brand chicken coops, which can be purchased at Tractor Supply Co. It's 2 kits put together without putting the center walls in place. And you can see on the roof here that there is a small gap that is formed whenever you put it together this way, but you can use a stretch of 12.5 gauge field fencing to patch that hole. And we've just attached that using the actual ends of the fencing folded over. You can also use hog rings or zip ties to attach the fencing, or even wire like intended for fencing as well. So these enclosures are great because they do come with this built-in top rather than you having to make your own. To provide them with shelter from the elements, the cheapest option would be to use a heavy-duty tarp like we have done here, but admittedly this is just temporary. We will be replacing this top with sheets of tin later on, but either way, whatever you prefer is perfectly fine. For the flooring, foxes do dig, and they dig very quickly and very efficiently. You have to have something on the floor to prevent them from digging out. Wire like this, which is 12.5 gauge field fencing, is honestly the least ideal, but the cheapest. We are using this field fencing temporarily because we are fundraising for cement pads to be poured for these enclosures, but it doesn't have to be a temporary solution. Many sanctuaries that we network with use these kinds of bottoms full-time, permanently, and in the early years of ClevyrCreatures, this is the kind of bottoms that we used as well for several years. There is technically some risk of injury, you would think, and animals are great at figuring out ways to hurt themselves, but in all the years of caring for foxes, I have not had a fox get injured on this kind of flooring. And as they live in these enclosures, the wire does eventually get covered up by the grass and dirt in the enclosure. The only reason you can still see the wire in this enclosure is because it's very new. These foxes have only been living in it for less than 2 weeks now. So the next bit of advice I'm going to give is regarding having a double gate entrance to the enclosure. This is something that could literally save your fox's life. So before we go out the gate, I want you to know this. I have this carabiner clip here. Anytime I am not in or working around the enclosures, the carabiner clip does go into place on the gate. And that is because many of the foxes here can actually open these gates if there is not a clip holding it shut. So, show you our little double gate entry here. We just have a second gate panel and a second wall panel here, forming a little bit of a triangle entryway, just so you have 2 gates that you have to walk through. So you go out one gate, shut this one behind you, and then go out the next gate, so that there is no risk of your fox slipping out behind you. And if they do, they are in this next double gate entry. Another bit of advice that I would offer is if you are ever going to have someone feeding your fox for you, it is a good idea to use these rotating kibble dishes, because then they do not have to go in the enclosure. They can just swing this out, feed them, and close it without ever having to actually enter the enclosure. We also use these hanging buckets with a carabiner clip, and that is so the foxes cannot flip them. They're easy to fill, and it just makes sure that their care can be completed as quickly and easily as possible when necessary and safely. The biggest difficulty in having a pet fox is genuinely just keeping them contained safely within their enclosures, because if they escape, it really is a life or death situation. Unfortunately, most foxes do not survive long if they get loose, and it's just good to do everything in your power to prevent that from happening at all. Another little bit of advice I will offer is these awesome dog houses. They actually have completely flat insides so that pee and poo cannot collect inside of them too easily. You can clean them very easy. Foxes are very bad about wanting to go to the bathroom inside their houses. And the lid actually opens, which allows for easier cleaning. And it also allows me to be able to get the foxes into kennels to go for vet trips and things like that more easily as well. Pyro's over here bothering them. It's okay, Swipe. I know, it's okay. Pyro, go lay down. Go lay down, Pyro. And foxes also like these Little Tikes play sets. These are the cheapest, like simplest ones that you can get. They're around $100, but it's really convenient and smart to look for ones for sale used. The big climber ones that have the platforms and the slides and such, the foxes really love those. We have a few of them here, and I would love to actually eventually be able to have one for every single enclosure so that all of the foxes can enjoy them. And then these elevated pet beds that you can get pretty much anywhere, but they're on Amazon, Chewy. The foxes absolutely love these. They like to bounce on them and hide under them. And that's really the best advice I have. From that point forward, it really is just a matter of spending time and learning how to interact with your fox. They don't behave exactly like dogs do. They are canines, so they have similarities, but there is a lot of overlap in behavior with cats and dogs for foxes, but they are overall just more unique than both of them. They are their own creature with their own behavior and their own habits. Another little bit of advice that I can offer is regarding toys. You want super, super heavy duty toys, and for most foxes, it is not a good idea to let them have plushies because they are really prone to ingesting the fabric and can become impacted, which is a life or death situation. They will require a very extensive surgery if that happens in order for them to be able to survive. You guys knock it off. So heavy duty, tough toys are absolutely a necessity. As far as diet goes, we feed our foxes a base diet of Mazuri exotic canine kibble. It is scientifically formulated for wild canines like wolves, coyotes, and foxes. And then we also give our foxes fresh raw meat, like chicken, turkey, deer when it's in season, rabbit, pretty much anything that we can get our paws on, except for pork, beef. Those are both too high in fat, as well as carrying parasites that can infect the foxes. Wild hog carries something called pseudo-rabies and trichinella, so it's just not safe to feed raw to the foxes at all. It's not something that we would recommend. They also enjoy fresh fruit, berries, melon. They like squash, carrots, things like that. They are mesocarnivores, so they do benefit from having a diet primarily made up of protein and meat, but also including plant matter. So that's just a little bit of advice about how you should go about getting a pet fox. And then once you've checked all these boxes, we always recommend adopting a fox from our sister sanctuary, Save a Fox. They are located in Minnesota, and they recently shut down a fur farm and saved the lives of over 500 foxes, as well as constantly taking in other foxes from other situations and as pet surrenders. And they have around 100 foxes that are available for adoption right now. So if you've ever considered having a pet fox, maybe take some time, see if you can provide these things that we've talked about in this video today, and maybe apply. See if you can help change the life of a rescued fox. Stay clever, everybody.